All right, let's verify that our stream is going live here. And we'll get started here in just a second. Yep, looks like we're good. All right, everybody. Well, welcome to the show. Our first guest today is Thomas MacKenzie. Thomas, you want to take a quick second and say hello, and then I'll be happy to talk about the topic, tagline, and also read your bio.
Yeah, perfect. Hey guys, nice to see you.
Right on. Okay, let's jump into this, and we'll kind of get into the weeds of our conversation. So the topic today is how to take control of the vulnerabilities facing your business. And our show tagline is why your company's best team to battle vulnerabilities is man and machine. And Thomas will explain that a bit here in a second. So a bit of a bio on Thomas. He has spent over 10 years in cybersecurity, building and running large successful teams of ethical hackers and vulnerability management consultants. He most recently led the growth of a business unit within a major blue chip company from 2 million to over 15 million in 3 years. Thomas is the CEO of RankedRight, which is a new platform that is widely predicted to supercharge the efficiency of IT security teams across the world. RankedRight is a triage platform which follows your team's preset rules to automate the time-consuming yet crucial process of ranking vulnerabilities in order of impact to your business. With teams reportedly wasting an average of 76% of their day remediating low-priority risks, RankedRight enables them to divert their attention towards tackling the most critical issues that keep the company safe. So I want to start, Thomas, with your journey from college. Before we went live here, you told me a very interesting story. So why don't you let us know how you started your journey in cybersecurity, and specifically as it relates to the story in college?
Sure. So I actually hated IT and anything related to computers, just because I'd spent kind of my entire childhood around computers and they frustrated me. And the only thing that I really enjoyed doing with them was playing video games, right? So I made the decision when I went to, so our college is kind of pre your college. It's between school and university. So when I went to college, I decided actually that I wanted to be an actor. So I studied theater, and that was.
And here you are, live on stage.
I know, right?
Your dreams are coming true.
So what I wanted to do, and I applied to a bunch of kind of theatre schools and stuff to study at college. But when it came to kind of making that final decision, my girlfriend, who's now my wife, she got accepted to study at the University of Cambridge, and I basically made the decision that if I didn't do something proper with my life, and apologies for any actors or actresses out there who are not happy with me saying proper. Basically, I made a decision that if I wanted to stay with her, I needed to do something semi-legitimate. So I kind of looked around to see, and bear in mind, for the last few years, I completely and utterly devoted my life to focusing on becoming an actor. That was it. So I literally had no idea what I was going to do, and then I found this course at university that was ethical hacking, and it was something that I was super interested in back in the day. And I'd read up on a lot of different techniques and stuff, but yeah, I just thought, okay, I'll give it a go. So I applied and I got accepted, and I started going there. And in my first year, I think it was maybe the beginning of my second, I found a vulnerability in WordPress, kind of WordPress core, that got me a lot of attention. And a local cybersecurity company reached out to me and basically asked if I wanted the job. And I remember, because at the time, I was at university, and any student, I was cash strapped, and I went there and basically said to them, yeah, I'd be happy to take this job. And they turned around to me and said, well, how much money do you want? And rather stupidly, for somebody who didn't know what it was that they were gonna, how to negotiate, I basically turned around, well, this is my rent, this is my car insurance, just give me enough, and we'll be fine. So yeah, I ended up taking that job, and ultimately, at that point, I had the job that I was studying for, right? Mm-hmm. A bunch of stuff happened, kind of, but let's say politically, with the university, and I decided to leave. and I also decided to take a new role. And I took a role at a company called Trustwave, which is a US-based company based in Chicago. I was based in their London office, which is where it's actually where I met my lead investor. He was my boss at the time, and we've stayed in touch. And he's now the lead investor for us at Ranked Right.
Right on. So, what does your wife think about this series of decisions?
I don't know if it's suitable. No, like, do you know something like my wife? My wife, I had a very good job prior to this, right? So it's quite difficult to step away from that and the kind of money that brings home to basically nothing, right? And my wife's smart, but she doesn't understand like the space that I'm working in.
Sure.
And I keep looking over there, by the way, because I can see her through the window. So yeah, like, she doesn't really understand it, but she has these conceptions. She's like, oh no, like, I'm not sure, whatever. There's a few things that have kind of like helped me with kind of her in this situation. The first is that she knows, like, my friend who's my business partner, Peter. She knows he's he's not going to do something stupid like I potentially would. She also knows John, the lead investor. So, if John's behind it, then surely it's an okay idea. And obviously she's seen all of the press stuff that's kind of come out recently and kind of, like how we've been doing. And it's made her feel, I think, a little bit better.
She's going to bust in your office and jump right on in here and give her opinion. Maybe we should have her on next week.
No. You'll hear the other side of me.
Yeah, totally. I can so relate. I did something very similar about a year ago. I left a very secure job and jumped off with my business partner to start the business we have now. And my wife was supportive all around, but it's scary. It's a leap of faith in a lot of ways. But it's also a leap of faith to stay with a company because nothing is ultimately that secure, as a lot of people learned, this last year with COVID. So I think we have more of the illusion of security sometimes than actual security.
Yeah, I think, for me, it was something that I really wanted to do. And I never had I basically never thought about not doing it, if that makes sense, when the opportunity arose. However, there's certainly like a fluttering in your stomach, right, as to that kind of makes you feel like maybe you should think about it. But, sure. I'm a pretty, once I made a decision on something, it's something that like I pretty much will always follow through with. And there's people around like the business now and, who have known about this prior to like me making the announcement of me joining Ranked Right. And I don't think they were in any kind of doubt that it was something that was gonna happen.
I see. So help me understand what Ranked Right does. Kind of explain it to me like I'm 5 version of what you guys do.
Sure. So 10, 15 years ago, an organization would look to try and identify vulnerabilities within their environment. So they would use, what we in the industry would call a vulnerability scanner. And what that vulnerability scanner does is it checks it's an automated tool that checks for vulnerabilities that are known, like that have basically been disclosed. People will write signatures for them, and it will scan across whatever you've got to identify whether that vulnerability is there or not. And 10, 15 years ago, when somebody ran this type of tool across their environment, it didn't really matter what scanner you used. It didn't really matter like the process that you did out the back of running those scans, because you weren't finding many vulnerabilities. However, if you fast forward to now, what happens is over the last decade or so, there's been an average of 20% increase in the number of disclosed vulnerabilities that are being announced like to the world. So when you run a vulnerability scan now, you can find thousands, tens of thousands, and in some cases, an old customer of mine, a large bank, they every time they ran scans across their environment, which was every month, they would identify at least 6 million outstanding vulnerabilities. Now, that's even after they've patched a bunch of them, that previous cycle.
Okay.
So the identification of vulnerabilities is no longer a problem. The real issue is how you prioritize those vulnerabilities, because you can't fix all of the vulnerabilities, and actually you probably shouldn't anyway, because there may be a reason why a particular vulnerability can't be fixed because of some business process.
Okay.
I know of a number of situations whereby if you fixed a particular vulnerability in a particular environment, nobody across Europe would be able to make card payments, right? So there are a bunch of things that you need to kind of allow and accept risk on. What we're doing with Ranked Right is we're basically building a platform that ingests vulnerability data from various different kind of tools. We then allow the creation of prioritization routines, or we call them a stored ranking profile, which is basically a static / persistent rule that every time a vulnerability kind of scan data is ingested by our platform, we transform that data out into kind of the route that they want, and then we provide like an on-platform task management, so that an organization is then able to work through the remediation process of fixing their vulnerabilities. I mean, that wasn't so much of a nutshell, but it gives you a little bit of the history and kind of what we're doing at a high level.
Yeah, that's helpful. So, I've got an idea. If you want a side hustle, you could just optimize your SEO for rankedright.com and sell leads to SEO companies. It's a heck of a domain.
Yeah, I know. So it's interesting actually, because I was thinking about I was thinking about the name the other day, and I actually said to my business partner, if I had the opportunity, I might have like changed it. And the reason for that is when we were starting kind of with the press releases and like trying to like get like news out there about what we were doing, the only thing that was coming up was like UFC fighters being ranked right, or like boxers being ranked right, and it was really annoying. But yeah, now we've had a bit of news, and we've got some of the SEO stuff working, and that like it's looking much better. But I was a little bit annoyed at the time.
Yeah, we can relate. Our business is called Xfusion. It's xfusion.io. But if you just like search in Xfusion, you get hair products and then bicycle parts. It's like, no, like, we don't do either of those. Like, we have our work cut out for us in SEO for sure. So Thomas, one of the things you mentioned is why your company's best team to battle vulnerabilities is man and machine. Can you elaborate on what you meant by that?
Yeah, so I mentioned before that the number of vulnerabilities that are being identified now is like far surpassed kind of, honestly what the expectation was. Like even when I started in the industry, things were quite advanced. But since I've started to now, I honestly can't believe like the number of vulnerabilities that are being identified each and every day. Like it is really proliferated. There isn't any way at all that an organization is able to, without hiring kind of like an army of individuals, able to kind of prioritize and remediate their vulnerabilities. So the only way that you can do this in an efficient manner is by utilizing automation in some way, shape, or form. And that's exactly what we're doing at Ranked Right. We're allowing the kind of utilization of the human element, which is kind of an understanding of that business's risk appetite, that what that business is willing to accept, and providing a platform that creates automation around those rules and those ranking profiles, so that an organization can speed things up. I'll give you a good example. One of the pilot customers that we've got at the moment, they I think it was last year. I'm just trying to remember that. Yeah, last year their vulnerability management team have somewhere in the region of about 7 people, like at capacity. And last year they lost 4 of those 7 in the space of kind of 6 months, I think it was, due to burnout. And I've done that job before, the job that they do, and let me tell you, it is super stressful. And we see a lot of kind of mental health problems within the cybersecurity space, and it's a huge issue. So, kind of utilizing the automation piece, which is like I say, what we're trying to do is, I think, imperative to be successful, both for your program, but also for the kind of mental health of like the individuals delivering the work.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, what would you say? And I know Ringtride is fairly new, just a few months old at this point, right?
Yeah.
So maybe this question's a little premature, maybe it's not. But what would you say is your biggest pain point within the company at this point?
That's a great question.
Or challenge, we could say it that way.
We've been really lucky with the kind of suppliers that we've chosen thus far. So we've got a great individual who focuses on marketing PR for us. We've got a great kind of outsourced development team, but there have been some, I wouldn't say issues, but the amount of money that we've had to spend on legal has been a lot more than I thought. And like, that isn't the fault of like the lawyers, right? Like, they're not fleecing us at all. But I think we certainly underestimated the amount of money that we needed to spend. So that was number one. Number two, actually, that's probably that's the only thing. If my business partner was on this, he would probably tell you a bunch of other stuff, because he deals with like operations, right? So he's dealing with like stuff in the background. But we've had a few things that have kind of slowed us down, and yeah, that's kind of the main one, is the amount of money spent on legal.
Yeah, fair enough. So tell me your thoughts on company culture. I mean, I know that Ringtride is new, but you obviously have a lot of experience in the space and leading teams. So what are your thoughts on culture, and what would you say your guiding principles are?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. So it's funny, my wife did some kind of like leadership course recently at work, and one of the things that she had to talk about was like, what type of leader is she? She asked me, what type of leader are you? And I joked that I was a dictator. In fact, actually, I once had a boss that told me that this wasn't a democracy, it was a dictatorship, and I had to do as he said. No, so the culture, hopefully the people who have worked for me in the past would say that I'm a fair kind of boss, a fair leader. I'm a big believer in delegation, and that isn't because I'm lazy at all, but ultimately, like, if you have people in your team, you should be trusting those people to execute on particular things, right? And actually, if you don't delegate, there's then the question of whether or not they're the right person for you. So, actually, prior to kind of like IBM, I had a huge problem of delegating and kind of working with other people, because I kind of only really trusted myself, right? But the team that I had at IBM was great, and they were able to kind of execute on the vision that I had and the vision that the people above me had really well. The way that I kind of help with like the direction is I utilize OKRs. So objectives, key results. For those of you who don't know about OKRs, I certainly recommend you reading up on them. It's all about creating an objective that is qualitative, and then key results that you can quantify again. So as an example, like one of your goals may be one of your objectives, may be that you want to improve your sales pipeline, let's say, but then the key result may be that that you're going to do something that's going to increase it by like 20% or increase it by 40%. And the interesting thing is that they're all stretch goals, or at least they should be. And you shouldn't actually be hitting all of your OKRs every time you kind of go off and like score them. Otherwise, you're doing it wrong. It's always about stretching you. And my kind of way of doing the OKRs was, we would set them as a leadership team, and then they would fall down. having said that, I found it very difficult, kind of setting OKRs in Ranked Right, just because my experience is working in large corporate organizations,
Mm-hmm.
and working in the startup, setting goals is, especially as early as we are, is
Yeah,
quite
sorry.
difficult.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then finally communication. Communication is like super key. So we actually within Ranked Right, we spent a lot of time flitting between like Google and Microsoft and Slack and loads of
Mm-hmm.
different like methods of communication. Because so my business partner is based down in London, our CTO is based in York, and then the other people that we speak to quite a lot, we have an intern who's based like, oh sorry, you're American, so you don't know this, but basically we're based all over.
Idea. Okay.
Yeah, it's remote work, right? So
yeah.
we've got that deal. So yeah, communication, making sure that you're fair, and setting these objectives right. The OKRs are huge for me. Like I really am a huge fan of them.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that David and I, my business partner, and I talk about a lot is, are we operating in the highest and best use of our time? And is our team doing the same? And I admit, like, that's a luxury that you don't necessarily get to have as a startup founder, at least not until you get to the steady state. But I think it's a good question to ask, and another way to phrase that is, am I doing what only I can do? Because if we're not, as leaders, I think we're underutilizing the team, but it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, if you look at it, it's very different for me. Like I've come away from a job that I had like 80 people, like direct, like reporting into me in various different ways. Whereas now there's myself, our CTO, and my business partner, the COO. So I certainly feel like I'm doing a lot at the moment, and like what I really didn't appreciate like before was like actually how much like people did do that I wasn't aware of. So I've come to the major realization that I absolutely hate building PowerPoint decks. It is the worst thing known to man, and yeah, my business partner and I basically just sit on Slack all the time and just try and figure out things that we can do that are completely and utterly not the PowerPoint deck. That's basically our day. But yeah, going back to what you said, I agree. Like it's all about making sure that you maximize the use of your time. Also, especially since like everybody's working from home at the moment, because I don't know, for other people, but one of the major kind of downsides of working from home for me is because I'm at home, my family expect me to do stuff. So like, whereas when I was in an office, yeah. I honestly didn't feel under any pressure to get home on time, which sounds horrible because I've got, a family, right? But there wasn't really any major pressure because I couldn't see them. But now I can like look through the window and I can see my kids like playing outside or there. Yeah. And like, I have that kind of feeling of, 5:30 comes along and, I should be inside with the family. So that's been a major change. And one that sometimes I feel guilty for on both sides. Because, we have investors and, I need to kind of do this for myself as well. And my business partner and CTO, everybody is kind of taking a risk and a gamble on what it is that we're doing. And, if I went back like 5 years, I'd never stop working. However, what I'm not doing is I'm not condoning that kind of behavior because I know that people need a break, right? It's just it swings and roundabouts.
It's hard. I had a paradigm shifting moment when I was listening to a podcast, and I wish I could give credit to who was saying this. I just don't remember, but it was a venture investor, and he said, people think that he goes, we're making bets, and a lot of the companies that we bet on don't succeed. But he goes, you know what? I work with founders that have technically failed over and over again, meaning like I will work with them again, even if they failed, because I recognize that it's not always just on the founder. Like sometimes things just don't work out and it's not personal. So I just, one of the things I've been working on doing in my life is trying to not have expectations, like to more measure my outputs, like to more measure like the things that I'm doing in the business to push it forward day by day, doing my best, and kind of divorcing myself from the outcome of that, because there are so many things that we don't have control over, you know?
Yeah.
But that's hard, man. Like it's definitely hard.
Yeah, no,
especially on the personal side.
Yeah, look, my opinion on the kind of like who you work with and stuff, like it's always really good to kind of work with people who are successful, and I think it's important that you work with people who have been successful in the past, because you can certainly learn from them. But then at the same time, you need to ensure that you've got people who've understood failure, right, and understood what it's like to not get there, because they're going to strive to not make those same mistakes. One of the big things for me, and kind of one of the major reasons why like I'm here and like I actually made the decision to do what we did is, I'm doing this with my best mate, and it's important for me like that that we get along and that we're able to help each other, because ultimately we're not just starting a business together and like working through this, but even though we're on opposite ends of the country, we're essentially living our life together at the moment, right?
Yeah.
And you need to make sure that individual is somebody who you trust, because you're going to talk about a lot of stuff that's not related to your business.
Yeah.
You're going to talk about stupid things like like I get a bad back sometimes, and like just being able to say, oh, my back is really bad, man, and him saying, yeah, don't worry, go lay down, or so, stupid things like that. Yeah. Stuff that you kind of I take for granted like at the minute, but I know that if I worked at like a proper job, like I wouldn't feel as comfortable doing that with somebody I was working with. So
for sure.
So yeah, that's a big thing for me.
Yeah. And you touched on this a little bit, Thomas, but I want to go a little bit deeper. So how do you seek to balance work and personal life? Or is that a misnomer? I mean, what are your thoughts when it comes to balancing your family life with your professional life?
It's a great question. I typically go inside and have dinner with my kids like in the evenings. At the weekends, I don't come into my office at all. So, I try to be present with my children and my wife like during the weekends. I spend like the evening with them, and I try to put my kids to bed. Look, it's quite weird for me, because prior to kind of COVID and the pandemic, etc., like I was flying to a different country pretty much every week. So actually, I'm so much more present like with my family now than I ever was. But an outsider may think that, man, he spends my office is in my garage. That man spends so much time in his garage. I do spend a lot of time in my garage, but I spend so much more time with my kids now than I ever did. So there's that side, and then also there's the flexibility, right? Like now, I was saying before we went live, this week I'm actually like I always think looking after my kids sounds weird because they're my kids, but basically my wife, they're in their Easter break at the moment, and my wife took the week off last week to watch them, and I'm taking this week off. So, just try to do that. I could be a lot better for sure, and my wife would tell you, if you get her on next week, believe me, she would tell you that I could do better. But yeah, I think it's just about being present when you can, right? Yeah,
absolutely.
That's it.
One of the things I've thought a lot about lately, last couple of years, is like, how do I measure my success? And I think this is true for a lot of founders, and coming out of the Industrial Revolution into the information age and working with our minds versus our bodies. I think we're so used to measuring time on a clock and counting that as contribution. But it occurred to me that like I can have a really positive sales call, and if I do nothing else that day, is that not a win? And I mean, of course, it rarely happens that I do nothing else that day. But my point is, trying to change my paradigm, instead of measuring hours spent, more measuring contribution to the business. So what if I work 6 hours or 7 hours a day versus 10 or 12, right? Like, is it really going to fundamentally change where the business ends up in the future. And I think in some cases, maybe, but I think in a lot of cases, there's this tendency to not delegate things we should and do things that are not the highest and best use of our time just to sort of fill the clock. That's something I've been guilty of in the past. I'm just really kind of rethinking that paradigm.
Yeah, I think
I'm reminding you.
Apologies.
Give everyone his inhaler.
No problem.
We're a smart home in this family.
Yeah, everybody knows Alexa and Siri.
Lost my train of thought now. Oh yeah, so nobody comes away from work at the end of the day and thinks to themselves, "I've had a really good day today," and that really good day has been based upon the fact that they've worked like the entire day, right? Nobody does.
Yeah.
The reason people feel like they've had a good day is because they've had a success that they can quantify or is tangible. I made that sale, or I've been able to do this, and it's taken me so much. I mean, that's maybe one thing this time. It's taken me so much time, but it's finally done. I like writing lists. You'll see, like, I've got like the whiteboard, like stuff behind me, and I've got like the notebook. I'm a huge like list guy, and one of the things that I do quite a lot is when I come at the start of the day to write the list of things that I need to do. Sometimes I say sometimes, pretty much all the time, I'll write things that I've already done so that I can tick them off already, because it makes me feel good about it. And I feel that it's really important to kind of, take those things, make them tangible, and ensure that you recognize that, it's something that's been done, because it makes you feel good about yourself. And almost it's like, you'll call it soccer, I call it football. It's like a game of football. What typically, actually, let me go back to the video games. So FIFA, if you play FIFA against the computer, the way that the AI works is when the other team scores a goal, basically your stats lower, because it allows them to kind of be on a roll kind of mentality, maybe score another goal and another, and it works the other way around, etc. And that's what lists do for me. I tick something off and I feel like I get that kind of quick buzz, and I can follow on really quickly, and so that's how I.
So it's kind of a tool to create momentum for yourself then as well, and there's little dopamine as you go along.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think that's I think it's really important to kind of incentivize yourself and make yourself feel good, right? Like, it sounds a little bit egotistical, but at the end of the day, we all have the need to feel, happy, right? And feel like we've had, made a success of something or whatever. So that's really important. And they're quite tactical, right? Like my outlook on life is focused on two things. I have these tactical kind of goals that, I'll set for a short period of time, whether that be on a day or, for a week or a month. And that I very much see my OKRs kind of sitting within that tactical space, even though, they are sometimes, for a quarter, but that's still in my mind quite a short period of time. Although that's certainly changed since I joined the startup. That a week can be feel like a year sometimes. And then I've got this concept of kind of these strategic goals. So where do I want to be in 3 years? Where do I feel like I need to be going? What direction do I need to be going in? That's kind of my strategic piece. So I set myself tactical goals and I set myself these strategic goals. Now, the issue that I had with that in the past, though, is I very much focused on my strategic goals. So basically, way back, I started my career. My strategic goal was, by the age of 30, I wanted to be in some. This is going to sound very egotistical, and it isn't that. It's just It was just a way of quantifying what it is. Anyway,
Totally.
I wanted to be in some form of position of power, whether that be like being a manager or being like a leader of a product or a leader of some. Basically, I wanted to have responsibility.
Okay.
And I got there, a lot earlier than I expected. And then I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, and I had like this mini nervous breakdown of, I've got to where I want to be. What do I do from here? And honestly, like I've probably been living that until I jumped into this, because it was difficult. So the only piece of advice is make sure you have a plan for after your plan. Is I guess what I'm saying.
Yeah.
There. The only other piece of advice that I'll give in relation to this is the concept of long-term greed. Don't do something tomorrow, that's going to benefit you, that may impact you in the future, in a negative way. Always think about, what's going on. And actually, our lead investor, my old boss, he was the one who taught me, like, all of this stuff that I'm spouting off now is basically from him.
Yeah, I love that. I think there's so many founders that think short term, and it's not worth winning short term to sacrifice long term success. And I think that a lot of the success stories we hear about, it's because of them playing the long game and making decisions in accordance with what, delaying gratification and thinking long term. So I think that's
there's loads of examples of that. So like situations where an investor has come along and said, I want to invest at this valuation, and turning around and saying no, and it feels like the end of the world at that moment in time, but further on down the line when you're looking for your Series A, it's really helped you out. We were having a conversation recently, so we're in the process of signing an agreement, hopefully with a managed security service provider, and kind of one of the benefits for them of getting involved with us so early is that they can like mold our product a little bit. And I was speaking to somebody about it, and they basically said, well, do you really want them to? Like, do you want like that organization to be, dictating like how you move forward? Now, for us, actually, it's good because the team and the individual, like what they're suggesting and like the help that they're giving us is great. Like that nothing is kind of veering off away from our roadmap and the way that we see things working. It's kind of just encouraging us to go in the right direction. That we're going in the right direction. However, there'll be certainly people in the situation that we're in right now who have some kind of the dangling of a carrot of some kind of signature or revenue or whatever, and taking that carrot is certainly not the best thing for them. And those are just two examples that I can think of about that long-term greed piece.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good. So I think about wisdom as the practical application of our knowledge and past experience. So what would you say that, and I know you're on the spot here and these are totally unscripted and you have no idea what I'm going to ask you, but what comes to mind of like something that you've learned, that you've developed wisdom that you now can apply with Ranked Right? And this can be on the personal side or the professional side.
Something that I've learned. I mean, a lot of what I've spoken about, like before, is kind of that wisdom that has been passed, onto me, so to speak. But if I was to think about something different from that, I spent a lot of time in this industry and I've worked for a lot of different people, and one of the things that it's an experience that occurred. So 2-3 years ago, I went to an event, it had different like vendor stands and all this kind of thing. And I remember going to meet a friend afterwards, and we were going to go to a bar. And as we were leaving this event together, we both looked at each other and we both had the same expression on our face, which was that of kind of, we were both like super disheartened. And I remember saying like, what's wrong with you? And then, he was asking the same thing. And basically what we were saying to each other was, we've been in this industry however long, each of us had been at the time. And the same vendors are there trying to solve the exact same issues, doing absolutely no help to anybody. The issue hasn't been resolved. And it really gave me it basically explained to me that what I was feeling wasn't something that was like just me. Like, this is an industry-wide problem. And I've been in meetings with potential customers and customers where sometimes, like, the stuff that I'm saying and the stuff that I'm selling for the companies that I'm working for, I don't believe it. And for me, Ranked Right has to be about believing in what it is that we do. And for me, having done this job before, having seen people being stressed out because of this type of job, having seen like organizations get breached and, losing data and getting fined and whatever, there is a huge problem with vulnerability management that nobody is resolving. Now, there are like other vendors that do stuff similar to us, and actually, I've sold some of their products and I do like their products. The problem is that they're very much focused on the enterprise. And I started my career in the small to medium kind of business world and moved into that enterprise space. Nobody is catering for or looking after or working with those small to mid-sized businesses. And, I see myself, again, not egotistical, I see myself as an expert in the field. People have in the past paid a lot of money for my advice. And I want to work with companies that need the help. And, I'm not going on this kind of social enterprise piece, blah, 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 blah. Like, obviously, like, the business is about making money. However, I'm really passionate about helping organizations do security better. And that's a big thing that, like, I've learned, like, over the last, few years. A lot of companies don't have a lot of money to spend, and they don't have, the expertise to find the right solution, and they don't have, in some cases, security teams at all. So how can you help those types of companies? And that's kind of, I've taken all of that experience and thrown it into what we're doing at Ranked Right.
That's great. Well, Thomas, I've got two more questions, and then we can land this plane. This one is kind of a theoretical. So imagine if you woke up tomorrow morning and you lost all of your money, all of your connections, but you maintained your knowledge and experience. What would you do? So you're kind of reset to zero. What would your path be?
Something came straight into... No. My wife is bathing the kids or something. And no, I'm looking outside because something did come into my head. But if I said it probably would like give away some kind of like secret of my mind. Basically, I was going to say, my background is a hacker, right? Like I'm a trained kind of ethical hacker. So if I still have that skill, I'd hack a bank or something. I don't know. So like I remember just like one offshoot of just like an offshoot story. I remember like sitting, and this goes back to like working too hard. But when I first started my career and I was working on a test, I was testing it wasn't Western Union or it wasn't Western Union, but a company like Western Union, based out in the Middle East. They'd contracted us to test their kind of main like website, and I was in the office till like 2 a.m. I wasn't forced in the office at 2 a.m. I was there till 2 a.m. just hacking away because I didn't have anything better to do in my life. And I gained access to an account that had over $14 million in it. And I remember like sitting there in the pitch black in this office, nobody around me. I'm just thinking, I could probably like disappear. And obviously I'm still here. So that didn't happen. But yeah, going back to it, I'd probably use my skills to get myself some money, and then I'd have money again and probably try and live a better life. I don't know. Great question.
Is it getting? And remember this, I'm a non-technical or certainly less technical kind of guy, but is it getting progressively more difficult to do hacking? Even just ethical hacking. Like, was that easier in 1995 than it is now?
Yeah, it's a funny question. I certainly can't answer the 1995 question because I was only 4 years old. But, yeah. So full disclosure, it's been a while since I've done like any kind of professional hacking, just on the basis, like I was doing it for some time, promotion kind of thing. And, most of my life now is spent in Excel and PowerPoint, unfortunately. But the answer is that it depends. The things that, attackers are targeting has become so vast that there's so many like niche areas to like focus on when it comes to cybersecurity that it's almost impossible to answer that question. So for a time, I was involved in automotive cybersecurity and like rail cybersecurity, and the stories that I can tell you about things that we were able to do with cars would honestly blow your mind. Is it getting more difficult? For me, if I was to do it, the answer would be yes. Like, Ranked Right, we're big at Ranked Right on kind of scalability within our platform. So all of our technology is serverless. We're utilizing kind of everything's cloud native. I honestly wouldn't have the foggiest clue of how to go about securing / like testing that type of environment. But somebody who was in my position, who's in the position that I was, when I started, probably could, break everything, right? And it's just about what it is that you focus on, what it is that you do. At the end of the day, right, we're hearing of companies getting breached, we're hearing of companies getting fined, we're hearing of, everybody's getting hacked at the moment. It's a matter of when you get hacked, not if you get hacked. So I wouldn't say it's getting harder. I just think that the landscape is changing.
Yeah. Looks like we have a bit of a lag.
There's a bit of a lag. Yeah,
I think we're back. There we go. Well, I just have one more question, Thomas. But before I ask that, I wanted to give you a moment to bring up anything that you would hope to talk about, or sort of if there was a question that you wish that I would have asked you. Just want to give you a chance to share whatever that might be. And if nothing,
I don't think it's anything. I think you ask your next question. You ask your next question, then maybe I'll come back to that.
Okay, fair enough. So I'm curious what advice you would give to founders in your shoes. So imagine folks that are starting to walk down the same path that you've walked down in your career. What advice might you have for them?
There's a couple of things. Don't do it on your own. It's super useful having somebody that you trust, like working alongside you, number one. But it's also gratifying to share those experiences together. It's kind of, for me, if I do something good, it's good for my mate, and if he does something good, it's good for me. So I really like the ability of kind of like sharing that. That's the first thing. The second thing is like when it comes to like working on the idea, make sure that you're utilizing kind of experience from people, who you trust and, have like mentored you, and, utilize your network, because ultimately something may feel like a great idea in your head. But, people can completely change your mind, right? In the way that they are, and the way that they speak about something. And luckily for me, that certainly wasn't the case. But like the counsel that I was given from John our lead investor. And then, like, as time has progressed from the other investors who have, invested into Ranked Right, it's kind of cemented in me that, I made the right choice. I know a bunch of people who have taken that leap of faith and like regretted it. And for me, that there's absolutely no regret in what I've done. Now, come speak to me in a year's time, maybe there will be, but as of right now, there's certainly none. So yeah, don't do it alone, and make sure that you utilize your network and your mentors and individuals like that.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, this has been great, Thomas. Anything come to mind before we close the show?
I probably should say something about Ranked Right to close. I spoke about I basically went into this kind of social enterprise pitch, right? About like why I believe that, we needed to do things in a certain way. That, as I said, like business is business, but for us, one of the first things that we did when we were looking to kind of like launch and deal with the brand was we focused a lot on our kind of brand and our brand messaging. And one of the things that we're going to post in the next few days, I think, is about the mission that we have and like how we're looking to kind of execute our plan across the industry. Our mission at Ranked Right is to focus on providing less admin and more action. There's a lot of time wasted on the administration of vulnerabilities and remediation. And if we can kind of pull some of that back and help organizations to kind of action what they need to, I think that's going to drive some really great results. And this isn't just something that I'm saying. Like, we really spent a lot of time on this brand piece. Like every call I go on and every kind of like thing that I'm doing, I have what we call our brand Bible, like here on the left-hand side. And like, if I flick through it now, this brand Bible is 38 pages long. Like, we spent a lot of time focusing on brand. So yeah, that, I think, two things. Don't come to us thinking, we're a startup, we don't know where we want to go, we don't know what we want to do. Because we do, we really do, and hopefully you guys will see that in the post that we publish in the next few days. The second thing for kind of people in my situation, spend time focusing on your brand, because actually, we've had some really great kind of kudos and people saying, you've done a good job with this and with that, and that wouldn't have gone anywhere without focusing on the brand and the way that we message.
Yeah, well, it's obvious, Thomas, that you're passionate about what you do, and while Ranked Right is new, you're not new to the space. So I think that should give folks a lot of confidence to entertain working with you. So domain is rankedright.com. And what's the best way for viewers to get a hold of you?
Email tm@rankedright.com, or I'm on LinkedIn, contact form on the website, whatever.
Okay, and we'll get that posted as well, so folks can just click the links to do that. But well, Thomas, you've been very gracious with your time, and I really appreciate you taking time to chat with us today.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks very much for having me, Jim.
Cheers.